British authorities arresting Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. Long known as Prince Andrew, authorities are probing him for suspicion of misconduct in public office, and he's faced these public accusations as well of sexual misconduct by Epstein survivors. You can see the headlines around the world. We know authorities are searching Andrew's residences. He was released after arrest, and the legal investigation continues. We can tell you tonight that by far, this is the most senior person to face any legal accountability over Epstein anywhere in the world. It's the first senior British royal arrested in 4 centuries. Never happened. This accountability for a royal was once practically unthinkable in the UK. And this new image of Andrew in his car, fresh after the arrest, with a facial expression that people can interpret for themselves, is ricocheting around the world. Our colleague, Nicole Wallace, who of course just passed off to me, made the point in her reporting today, this is indeed a 1 in 400 year event.
Start with breaking news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. The BBC understands that he has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office.
The fallout from the revelations in the Epstein files has now led to a 1 in 400 year event.
The biggest story in the world right now, that is the arrest of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor.
L'ex-prince Andrew, membre techniquement, membre de la famille royale.
Those links with the convicted paedophile, the late paedophile Jeffrey Epstein.
There's a maximum sentence of life imprisonment for Andrew.
Searches are currently ongoing at Royal Lodge.
The first senior royal in modern history to be arrested.
Just a seismic development. And you can see different analysts and journalists reaching for ways to put it in context. It's not only the biggest Epstein arrest, it's, for the UK, the biggest royal arrest ever. Now, he was only recently stripped of his titles over links to Epstein. This scandal had dogged him for years. And he stayed close with Epstein, even as it clearly dragged him down in many public forums. Andrew also gave an infamous interview in 2019 where he struggled to address the serious allegations against him. We can note that he has not been indicted on any sex crime here. He's always denied wrongdoing in connection with Epstein, and as with any legal case we're following, even when charged, the process must play out. In the United States, people are presumed innocent. In the UK, where we've drawn some of our legal traditions, he would await, of course, the rest of the legal process. But when you look at this development, what changed all of a sudden in the UK as we see a royal arrested and leaving that process? What changed is what occurred here in the U.S., because Congress forced the release of the Epstein files over Donald Trump's many objections last year, and that's what drove the swift impact. And more scrutiny and new evidence and emails on Andrew's long history with Epstein, just as others have found themselves under scrutiny in Europe for their Epstein ties, and in countries around the world because he ran a global influence effort. So tonight now we can see that, aided by the new files, British authorities are investigating Andrew's alleged misconduct in public office, which includes how he dealt with Epstein and how he used his own role. In the UK, a little bit different than here, he's basically released under investigation. To put it in plain English, in the U.S., we think of arrest as something that happens alongside your indictment and you go forward. There, the probe continues while he has been arrested, which shows his obvious interest to investigators as a subject. Now, even before today's news, we're talking about the gap between what happens with accountability, whether that's legal or in other institutions, and what is alleged or known. Because other Epstein advisors had previously specifically accused Andrew of abuse. One detailing how Ghislaine Maxwell and Epstein allegedly essentially trafficked her to Andrew when she was 17. So, one, this new arrest matters for accountability. That's what a legal process is supposed to do. But I want to give it extra context tonight on this story we've all been following for so long, including in Donald Trump's America. Because, two, this type of development reignites serious questions about whether the United States DOJ was wrong to close down the Epstein case by only charging Epstein and Maxwell. You've heard me mention this if you watch this program, because we documented how the new files reveal things we would have never otherwise known, like how the DOJ previously eyed other, let's pull this down. I want to make sure we get this right. If we have the DOJ Epstein Inner Circle faces, we'll show you that. If not, I'll just describe it. I don't want to, in fairness, we don't want to show the wrong faces. So let me just say this with words. The DOJ has eyed other suspects with Epstein. There were several people identified as potential suspects and others redacted from the new release. We know the DOJ ultimately did not charge most of them. That includes Jean-Luc Brunel, who is named in a new bombshell Wall Street Journal report that looked at how he was an alleged conspirator, how the DOJ sought to flip him against Epstein to take his testimony, but that plan fell apart when he went dark. That's new reporting also based on the files. This relates to the UK for a very clear reason. The United States DOJ treated the Epstein case as essentially, in the end, a narrow enforcement against his sex crimes. That is to say, what he did, and they wanted to prosecute him for what he did, his own physical activities. I say it that way because, as you might remember, the DOJ did not pursue or indict a wider sex trafficking ring that would involve potentially other criminals or other men. And that was the case under Trump's Attorney General in 2019. It remained the status quo approach under Attorney General Garland. And yet here we are tonight looking at other countries investigating other men allegedly tied to Epstein. If more investigations and evidence show that the DOJ's approach was incorrect, by which I mean factually and legally, if more dominoes fall in this Epstein scandal, that would vindicate many survivors we've heard from and other legal critics who allege that the U.S. government fell short, failing to hold these other powerful men accountable. That is the context for the mounting outrage over the Trump administration's current stance.
The UK was able to come forward, take action, and that is a big thing. Why the DOJ, why the FBI has not yet to take action.
The UK drawing quite a contrast with the US this morning. In those words, no one is above the law.
It only underscores the lack of any law enforcement activity here in this country.
It's happening in Europe, but it's not happening enough in the United States.
That's what we're seeing today, which is a very glaring contrast. The voices you heard there are journalists, lawmakers, one survivor who spoke out today. And top lawmakers who led the Epstein Files bill are saying the same thing. Democratic lawmaker Ro Khanna notes that he and Rep. Massey forced the release of an email showing former Prince Andrew allegedly sharing state info with Epstein. He notes that he's being held accountable because of survivors, including Virginia Giuffre, who bravely spoke up. He goes on to note how others have resigned from DP World, or the Norwegian prime minister is charged. There's accountability around the world, Khanna says today. Why isn't more being done here? We should start with Trump official Howard Lutnick resigning. And it's true. Even amidst accountability in the UK, once thought unthinkable, someone as powerful as a royal, someone who once would have been in the line of succession, as that happens over here, Donald Trump is literally standing with an official who lied about visiting Epstein Island. Now, these individuals we showed you on the screen and others have not been accused of criminal wrongdoing in connection with this case. But there is mounting accountability for so many in the U.S. and around the world. This is the chart I was going to show you, which is relevant here. You see Lutnick has had testimony sought. You see others have been ousted or subpoenaed. You have Andrew, now not only sanctioned earlier in the UK, but new today, arrested. These are people who are tied to Epstein in emails, in communication, in conduct. And this is the mounting and relatively quick accountability since the files dropped. It's a gap between Trump protecting his Epstein associate and how accountability is working everywhere else. And Donald Trump spent much of the last year fighting against the release of these very files, a battle that he ultimately lost badly. Humiliatingly, say some, in public, which is how we got to here. We don't know. He may yet lose this next round as he stands by the lying Epstein associate and his candidate and drags out an Epstein scandal in his cabinet. Because apparently Donald Trump fears that for him, more Epstein transparency would be even worse than this. Another year where the Trump White House, the Trump administration, the Trump DOJ, and Trump's handpicked cabinet members are under the Epstein scandal of their own making, while his approval sinks to record lows.